Here.
Naker is excused. Prince.
Here.
Tao is also excused. Tolbert.
Here.
Yang.
Here.
5 present, 2 absent, that being Commissioners Naker and Tao. Item number 1, Min 21-20, approving the minutes of the June 2021 HRA meetings.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Renmon. Roll call, please.
Brenmoen.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Yang.
Aye.
Chair Tolbert.
Yes.
5 in favor, no one opposed. The minutes are approved. Item number 2, Resolution Public Hearing 21-170, authorizing the issuance and sale of conduit charter school lease revenue refunding bonds under Minnesota statutes, sections 469.152 through 469.1655 for the Nova Classical Academy project, 1455 Victoria Way, and approving related documents. District 9, Ward 2.
Great. And I am going to withdraw this item at the request of Nova Classical Academy. So we will withdraw.
Thank you.
We can move
Item.
on.
Say that again. I'm sorry, I missed that, Chair Tolbert.
Oh, I just said we can move on to the next item.
Thank you. Item number 3, SR 21-124 is a planning team update.
Great. Director Goodman.
Yes, thank you, Chair Tolbert, Commissioners. The presentation today from the Planning Department is just the second part. You got through part of this at an organizational committee meeting, and we ran out of time. We do have time today and with a light agenda, so we thought we'd go ahead and let Planning Director Luis Barrera take over here, and he has some other planning members on the call as well in case there are additional questions. So I'll turn it over to Luis.
Welcome.
Thank you, Director Goodman and board members. Sorry, I have to figure out which hat you're wearing right now. I would like to continue with a presentation, and sorry, I'm having to scroll here. I thought it was going to come up on the slide. So we got through the majority of this presentation, and I wanted to pick up where we left off, which was what I call other essential work of the planning team. On the team, we have what we call the research and mapping sort of sub-team or function. And this is actually work that's led by Bob Spalding. Many of you know him. I've worked with him. He's a great source of information about data and about sort of data techniques and strategies and different ways to get at various different sorts of research questions. I just want to highlight that work because, frankly, it's not maybe as visible out there in terms of members of the public, but it's really, really important for both for the planning team, the broader PED team, and the city as a whole. And so just wanted to highlight a few projects that are ongoing. At the top of the list is the investment tracking data systems project. This is where we are working closely with a consultant and the other teams within PED, as well as OTC. And so right now we're in the phase of developing an RFP for a consultant to help us essentially evaluate options in terms of a software system, either to build out or sort of take off the shelf and develop upon. We are hoping we have a draft RFP done by the end of this month. Then we'll have to work with procurement and ensure that we follow all the processes that are required to get it out. There's been a ton of work over the last, say, like year or two with our various divisions to really understand and document what are their business needs. what they call wireframes, and that's something that I don't entirely understand, but sort of building out the skeleton and essentially understanding what is the meat on those bones in terms of what our business needs are. You may recall or have heard in the past from PED that we have just sort of a plethora of databases. I've heard figures of up to 24 different databases on various different spreadsheets, and maybe databases and overstatement in some cases, where we're talking about different programs that have tracked outcomes on spreadsheets, which is really not good business practice. And so the goal of this ITS system would be to take all of that into account and into one sort of single system. While you're thinking about that, I'll kind of move on, but Bob is here as well. If you have follow-up questions, we can try to answer those. Bob and team, especially Michael Wade, has been working on, some of you remember a data product that's actually up on our website called St. Paul Market Watch. And so is doing kind of the 2.0, we've done the 2.0 version of that, and tentatively dubbed it St. Paul Trends. And basically the biggest difference is there's a much more interactive approach to it. So it would be online, various different sort of interactive mapping tools and data tools that would be open to city staff, members of the public, elected officials, to really explore where we're at in a number of different areas. So everything from demographics, building trends, to housing, employment, racial equity indicators, and so it takes advantage of ArcGIS online tools. It's what I like about it is it has a short narrative describing the data or the map that's showing up on your screen. You may have heard story maps. It's kind of similar to that, where you've got sort of the illustration, the map, or the photo and the data, you can download different things out of that. So that's something that's exciting, and we're finalizing that project and hope to get that launched very soon. We also have a project on here related to supporting the housing team on a variety of different housing data indicators, working with partners like Housing Link in Ramsey County, as well as some other data sources that we have to ensure we have the latest and greatest information. Also some training on ArcGIS mapping tools. There's a different platform that's released now, and some of the GIS users haven't used it much yet. So some internal capacity building. And the Amanda system is, you may know, it's an enterprise data system used by multiple departments, particularly OTC, DSI, PED, and others. If you can hear me, I just went off video because I've been told that I'm breaking up a bit, hoping that helps. Let me know if you can, or if you need me to repeat anything. This Amanda, there's various different projects with the Amanda database. The key to point out here is we've been told that the city's moving towards a replacement for that system, OTC, and so they're collecting information about the various different departments that make use of that. We make a big use of it on the zoning team, as well as the heritage preservation team, and so ensuring that we have our input is really important. In addition to research and mapping, the PED pass-through development grants function. This is really about supporting the application phase of pass-through development grants. The key funders here are the Metropolitan Council and BEAD. Ramsey County from time to time has some pass-through grants as well. And so our role on the PED planning team is to work with project managers, work with developers to help them evaluate what are these funding sources. There's various different buckets, everything from cleanup of sites to working on support for pre-development activities to actually development funding. And so Anton Jervy's really been our lead in this area for the last few years. And we have a pre-application process. So before people go and apply to Met Council or DEED, apply to us first, and we evaluate who we want to support. And you'll know that we bring these applications to you at the City Council rather, for applying on the front end, as well as if we receive those awards, we also bring that acceptance to you at a later point. I'm just showing a few examples of some of those sites and projects that have been we've worked with on the front end for our pre-applications and have been awarded funds. And so a lot of those are exciting and throughout the city. And then we work with another group, PED, the administration team on, once the award is received, a project manager gets assigned and works with the developer to ensure those activities that are funded are documented and moving forward, and funds supported and dispersed and all of that. Lastly here, I will also point out, we have a new planner on the team. Some of you will be meeting very soon. Her name is Marilyn Rosendahl. She will be taking over this function from Anton. She's also the district planner for the Highland area. So Councilmember Tolbert will be hearing from her very soon. But this is a moving kind of function here, and excited to have another person on board to help with capacity on the planning team. And then on the other thing I haven't mentioned on this slide is the BIPOC Developers Initiative. So the planning team is helping convene our housing and economic development staff in PED, along with leadership, to define the goals, objectives, and activities in this space. Our current effort is to focus on defining and reaching out to trainers and preparing for a future cohort of BIPOC developers that could be applicants for a future Inspiring Communities RFP. It's looking like it might be early 2022, and we're looking at sort of a cohort model, potentially one or more trainers, so a lot sort of dynamic in that space as we get into that work. Menika Mohan is working on that, and I think that's the benefit of having a planner is, oftentimes we're really great at convening and assessing information and, understanding kind of the bigger picture, getting the parties in the room, building off of our strengths as a community in terms of business development training and so on and so forth. So that's a great initiative, and we'll have more to report soon. This next slide here is about other things in the citywide planning or neighborhood planning space that weren't necessarily on the 2021 work program. They may have been bubbling under, things that we'd love to get to but couldn't because of capacity, or things that have come up since the beginning of the year. So one of those ideas that's been bubbling under is this citywide wetlands planning effort. Wes Saunders Pierce in DSI Public Works Sewers is leading this effort. There's some funding that's coming from Cap Region Watershed District, as well as a bit from PD and Public Works to fund the effort. And there will be an RFP that's very close to being released for a consultant to support a citywide wetlands plan. So more to come on that. Working with Wes. There's a group, and I don't think Commissioner Naker's on this call, maybe, but there's a group downtown in the Fitzgerald Park, Peter Park area that's taken a real active interest in sort of what's going to happen with the park and sort of the development plan for the park that Parks and Rec has developed, as well as, what are options, relooking at options for the public safety building and the broader block, and sort of asking questions about how do we build on this park concepts to do more placemaking, to understand what city plans exist, how can we use CIB dollars to support this park. And so we've been, PED has been involved in some of those meetings, going to their meetings. Essentially, they're leading the work group, and we're showing up and answering questions and helping as much as we can. And then you all know also about anti-displacement policy work. We've talked about it in some of the previous city council and HRA meetings. We have a draft that's so close to be released. We're taking a broader look than inclusionary zoning. So there's inclusionary zoning as a part of that, but then looking at other strategies in addition to that, things like community ownership sorts of programs and approaches. What is the role of property tax programs? Whether we can reduce or freeze property taxes, or sort of figure out what are options that we already have on the table, as well as things like value capture, maybe above and beyond tip. Those sorts of strategies that would help, when employed, a variety of those things could be applied to support anti-displacement. And then yet to come this year, they're all really, I'd say mostly things in the work program as amended. So follow-up conversations with departments and divisions about the comprehensive plan and implementation. So moving into that phase, what are our top 4 to 5 things that come out of each chapter, really, that are actionable as it relates to the work we do, ensuring that we become a champion for that document that's adopted, and so on and so forth, putting that into effect. We have the Hillcrest master planning process. So there's a planning commission recommendation yet to come this year. The AUAR, the environmental review document for the Snelling Midway site, it actually expires. It's good for 5 years and actually expires in early August. So we're working closely with the consultant retained by the developer to get that updated quickly. Like I mentioned, the St. Paul Transit Tool should be launched yet this year. Additional work on BIPOC developers initiative that I mentioned. The launch of that anti-displacement RFP, looking at a funding strategy, consultants, and hopefully getting to that initial work yet this year. And other zoning studies I mentioned last time. So we're additional progress on those items. The parking study that you'll be hearing about shortly. Planning recommendation is one that's coming up. And then related to that, staff has begun to scope out some possibilities with our traditional neighborhood districts in terms of, are there some things we could do, kind of low-hanging fruit, to build in some density incentives for increased, if a project includes affordability. That's something we did, you may recall, with the RM zoning study last year, where we built in a slight density bonus, some additional floor area ratio if you include a certain percentage of affordable units in the project. So making a parallel sort of amendment to those districts. It sounds really in the weeds and technical, but nice to have a parallel approach if possible, even though those districts are a little bit different. Next year, so what might be coming? Haven't written the work program yet, but we know transit corridors, that's multi-year work. Begun conversations with Public Works. They are working on a sort of a downtown transportation, downtown mobility planning effort, and they hope to move that forward. It spurred some conversations with us about an update to the downtown development strategy. That's, you'll recall, a 2005 document, what Lucy Thompson used to call the downtown chapter of the comprehensive plan. Maybe need to have a broader strategy for downtown. We are coming out of recovering from this pandemic. Recovery may be a while, right? So what does that mean for downtown? What is our broader plan? Downtown vitality, transportation, and economic development, really big, important pieces of that. And so we want to work closely with Public Works, even as they move forward on that mobility strategy. Lots of news about Reconnect Rondo and the Rondo Land Bridge with funds awarded by the Met Council, state, potentially other funding coming through soon. And so a lot of that falls within sort of the planning space, master planning, looking at similarly to the broader citywide anti-displacement strategy analysis. What are some more local anti-displacement strategies and programs? So working closely with Reconnect Rondo on that. And then this is kind of a nice to have if we can get to, I would really like us to, looking at our home occupation zoning standards. This is something that's prioritized from the comprehensive plan. And really, as we think about a lot of us are still working from home. Some people are working a couple days a week from home, that sort of thing. Just, greater flexibility for small business people, entrepreneurs in St. Paul that are home-based businesses. A lot of entrepreneurs start out, they have a regular gig and then they've got their side gig with small business sort of startups, and having that flexibility for people as they're at home would be really helpful. That section of the code hasn't been updated in a very long time. So we've been talking to DSI about that one, and they've got some thoughts too. So that's really it.
Just a question on the last slide. How does, obviously with limited staff capacity, different things that planning works on need to be prioritized, and some are required by law, like the comprehensive plan or the zoning along the river. But the other things on here that are not necessarily required by law, how does planning prioritize and decide what to pick in terms of spending the staff time on?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So and I'll jump back to this slide. Let me see if you can see this. Sorry, I lost my place. Hang on a second. So can you see this with the colorful circles?
Yep.
So thank you. So this is kind of part of the answer to that question. We obviously prioritize things that are legally mandated and required. We also, obviously a priority of the administration is high up in that weighting. Items that are specifically listed in the comprehensive plan. A good example of that is the definition of family, right? That one is both in the comprehensive plan, but it was also prioritized by the commission and the city council. So, especially things that fall within more than one of these circles, those get really prioritized. And then, beyond that, beyond, sort of mayoral priority, planning commission, city council priority, are there, we evaluate using the values in the policy of the comprehensive plan. So if something isn't specifically listed in the comprehensive plan, but it's really, really consistent with it, we would put a bigger weight on that. Are there's opportunities to advance equity, innovation, resilience, community wealth building, sort of systems level impacts. So things like I mentioned, the transit corridor work, not only having sort of a mobility modes perspective, working with public works, but also what are the economic development impacts of better transit, and are we ensuring our land use is positioned for those benefits? Those are things that we prioritize because they have those systems level impacts over time that create better, more opportunities for small business, for additional housing. And so, that's an example on that left side of things that we're prioritizing. The land bridge is another one that, that it's a big infrastructure project when you look at it, but then when you actually start thinking about, longer term, the potential to knit together, a neighborhood that was really disrupted and impacted, to create better mobility across 94, better connections to transit, and actually economic development, and that benefits the community. Again, those system level impacts, opportunities for community wealth, opportunities for greater resilience. Those are the kind of things that would push us to prioritize a project like that. So I'm hoping I'm giving you some helpful examples. The other one I'll mention that was on the slide is the home occupations. I mean, it actually does in the comp plan say we need to remove regulatory barriers for small scale business development. And so like that is very much a small scale thing. You know, you maybe a very small business don't have your own location. You don't, whether it's, you know, you're a tenant in a commercial space or you own your own building, but you know, you really are starting your business from home. Maybe you go meet clients in a neutral space, or you know, you're some sort of small scale artisan producer, and you know, the line between residential and commercial is fuzzy, right? And so like, but the impacts of that work really are minimal from a zoning and a building code perspective. So allowing for that to happen, and so greater regulatory flexibility for that small scale development, and that's a priority in the comp plan, and so that gives us a greater push to work on it.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. One of the things I mean, I would just say is, and we talk about this often with when we have budget choices is, you know, with limited either money or time, saying yes to some things is indirectly saying no to others. So prioritizing, you know, appropriately. And I think there's always been, for my time on all my time on the council. So you know, actually when you first were here and then including the time you left the city and came back, but there's always been kind of this, I think, misunderstanding of how these topics are chosen. Some of the council members I've talked to have said, oh, the planning commission's the one who made that choice. And I've talked to planning commissioners who are like, oh, we assume that came from the council. So what I think would be helpful to just bring transparency and to ensure that we're prioritizing what policymakers are prioritizing is if when we come for the budget, you know, obviously some things come up out of nowhere that, you know, people aren't anticipating throughout a year. But if we could get similar to what probably, I think it's on the second to last slide that you had there, similar to what you plan to do in 2022. So we know what we would be funding, particularly with the HRA, but what we'd be funding for next year. And quite frankly, then we can know what we're not choosing to study or to work on by not having them included there. So I just think that would be helpful to know what the work plan for 2022 is intended to be when you guys come back for budget and present this part of it. I think that would be helpful for everybody. And then we can ensure that we're part of that conversation and have the transparency to know what's actually being studied is what the policymakers representing the people of the city of St. Paul are prioritizing as well.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
I think we're on the question page before I started asking questions. Do any of my colleagues have questions or comments? Or all right, I guess the rain has eased everybody up. Relax, everybody. Commissioner Prince.
Thank you, Chair Tolbert. And Luis, you may have said this. I know that you have in one of those summary pages that you expect that the inclusionary zoning study may be able to be underway before the end of the year. Have we released the RFP yet on that?
Not yet. We are still revising it. I would really like to get this out. I know Director Goodman is pushing us to get this out ASAP. We need to get some time to finalize that, work with our procurement folks, and to get it out. We also have the challenge of the funding for it, and that's separate work we're going to need to do. But that frankly can happen, I think, you know, on a parallel track. I don't know if the director wants to mention anything here, but yeah.
I don't have anything to add other than that the scope is very, very close. We've made a few final edits even this week, and we're trying to get it out as quickly as possible, and appreciate all the comments that some of you have provided as well.
Thanks for that. And the only other thing I wanted to say is this is truly an amazing body of work that you've presented over 2 meetings. This morning, I went to the Business Review Council meeting, and Director Goodman made a presentation of everything that PED is working on right now. And I thought, you know, it touched on planning, but we have spent the better part of a couple of hours just examining the huge amount, the huge scope of work that our planning division is doing. It's really impressive. It's really daunting. And I believe in my heart, though I haven't done staffing analysis, that we are probably short of the number of people we need to be able to carry out the scope of work that PED has in front of it. So this is something that I think we need to be prepared during the budget work that we have before us to take a hard look at the amount of work that PED has before it, the importance of this work. Inclusionary zoning, you know, it's something that the council asked for by way of our housing resolution in July 2018. We understand that it, you know, it goes on the list of all the things that we want done. But I do think that, you know, what we're seeing here is that we have a lot of priorities that are probably not adequately staffed. So I hope we can make some steps forward in terms of figuring out how to fill some vacancies in this year's budget process. But thanks so much, Luis. It's been a great report. It's extremely informative, and I appreciate having this PowerPoint to share with people who are interested in what we have coming forward.
Thank you.
Commissioner Brown.
I won't reiterate what Ms. Prince said, but I fully agree, and I'm sorry that I missed the presentation this morning at the Business Review Council. But I would just, I think taking the final comments there that you just made, Ms. Prince, about this huge body of work and the need for staff to do the work, and recognizing that, you know, we want to do everything. But without proper, you know, support behind it, we simply can't. You know, there just isn't a way to do that. And so I think that every year it's our responsibility to recognize that if there is work that we want to see done, then we need to put our money behind our mouths and fund positions to do that work, or I think it's a little bit of both, is recognize that there's some things that just can't get done. And so that is something, as we're like waiting, we're looking forward to hearing the budget presentation from the administration. And I think that is just something that we have to recognize, is these things don't happen in a vacuum. And if we, the long list of things that's been presented to us today and through other parts of the important work of the PED are important, that they do need to have the staff behind them, or we need to prioritize which things are at the top of the list and which things can be put on the back burner for a while, because we just, we can do anything, but we cannot do everything. And so I just kind of seconding the thoughts that you said and putting a fine point on our work as council.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No, thank you very much for that presentation and for doing it 2 different days and coming back for more. And just because we did discuss on the last, the presentation is attached to this meeting, so anyone who's maybe watching this at home, they can pull up the entire presentation on the council agenda website. So thank you for getting that attached. And I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. Is that right? Rick? Did I miss anything? All right. We will be adjourned. See you guys at 3:30.
Thank you.